I'm not a pretty sleeper, you know, we got some like drool action going on and stuff. Alright, so today it's Foundation Friday. This week we're actually going to be talking about my favorite foundations for oily skin. So if you're new here, I just recently got off of Accutane, but before that I had acne and oily skin for years. So I have had lots of time to try out different foundations for oily skin. I had pretty oily skin. I would get like the grease ball phase within a few hours with a lot of foundations. I never got around to making this video when I had oily skin, so here we are today. I will be doing one for dry skin eventually, but I feel like I've only had dry skin for under a year so far, so I just want to wait a little bit longer so I can try different products and kind of find more that I really like. The foundations I'm mentioning in this video I have used on oily skin. It's not just me saying right now I think these foundations might be good for oily skin. These are ones that are like very much tried, tested, I recommend for oily skin. I have videos using every single one of these foundations, so if you want to check them out, all you have to do is search the name of any foundation and the Tela, and if I have a video on it, it'll pop up and you can watch it. There are a mix of different finishes and coverage just depending on what you like, so I'm just going to go through them all. If you're excited for this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, you can join the Bayrito family and subscribe. I upload every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So it is so rare to find a foundation that has every single thing that you want in it, that controls your oil, that is the right shade, that has the right finish that you like, the right coverage. It's really hard to find all of those things in one. So a lot of these foundations I would use for mixing with other foundations. The foundations I'm mentioning today are what I would say are more oil controlling foundations. So you can wear these alone if you can find a shade and everything and you like the coverage of it on its own, or you can mix these in with other foundations to help control the oil. Also, the primers you use, powder, and setting spray can have a huge impact on overall how your foundation looks. Sometimes setting spray can just totally transform a foundation. If you have oily skin, primer can totally transform your skin. All right, so the first one, which is definitely in my top out of the top, is the Too Faced Peach Perfect Comfort Matte Foundation. This foundation retails for $36 and now it does come in 20 shades. They recently expanded the shade range on this. I have the shade Snow, which was the old lightest shade, and this one is too dark and too yellow, so I did just buy Swan. It's still coming in the mail, so I can't show it, but hopefully that's a better shade match for me. Two right here is actually the Too Faced Peach Perfect Foundation. Between filming this video and then filming the swatches right now, I did get the lightest shade that I ordered in the mail, so this is the new lightest shade Swan. And then next to it right here is the shade Snow, so it's not a whole lot lighter and it still is pretty yellow, so kind of bummed about that. I mean, if you look at it compared to some of these other light shades, this is still not very fair. So that's the new lightest shade of the Too Faced. This is one of those foundations that just totally blew my mind. Solid medium coverage. You can build this one up to get pretty good coverage. The thing I love about this is that it truly is oil controlling, but it doesn't look heavy. It doesn't look cakey. It looks like skin and it is friggin' transfer proof. This is one of the few foundations I found that is truly transfer proof. If you are worried about like your foundation coming off when you hug people, if being transfer proof is important to you, check out this foundation. It keeps your face looking pretty much the same throughout the day as far as oil goes. When I had acne and oily skin, this wasn't enough coverage for me on its own unless I really built it up. So I did like mixing this in with something that had a little bit more coverage. But if you like soft kind of satin matte finish that's transfer proof and medium coverage, get this foundation. So this next product is technically a BB cream. I've talked about this for a long time now. I feel like out of everything I'm mentioning, this is the most oil controlling. It's by Covergirl. It's the Clean Matte BB cream. This BB cream is so freaking amazing at controlling oil, whether it's on its own, whether you mix it in with the foundation. This is like a perfect oil controlling mixing product. The lightest shade, 510, is way too dark for my skin tone, so I've always had to mix this. I can't wear it on its own unless I have on like self tanner or something. This only comes in 6 shades, which is obviously very shitty. Covergirl's lightest shades are always way too dark. Covergirl needs to seriously work on their shade range on both ends of the spectrum. They recently rebranded, so if you're trying to find this now, the outside packaging is going to look different. You can get this for around $7 depending on where you get it. It has solid medium coverage. It gives you a beautiful soft matte finish where again it doesn't look heavy, it doesn't look cakey at all, keeps your oils at bay, makes your foundation look great throughout the day. Awesome product. All right, so this next one is one that I feel like I did a video on and then I don't think I've ever talked about it again since then, but I have continued to use it again since then when I had oily skin. This is the Estee Lauder Double Wear Maximum Cover. So this isn't the, original Double Wear. They have different versions of Double Wear. When I filmed this video, the lightest shade was 1N3, which is way dark. When I went to check the price and everything for this video right now, I noticed that they actually expanded the shade range. They now have 16 shades and the lightest shade is now 1C1 Cool Bone. So that's super exciting. I'm definitely going to be ordering the lightest shade now, 1C1. This foundation retails for $42. Great for controlling oil and adding coverage. This has full coverage. When I had acne, it covered everything. Amazing coverage. It doesn't look as thick and cakey as the Double Wear. This definitely has more coverage than the Estee Lauder Double Wear. I can't remember what foundation I mixed in with this to lighten it that particular day, but when I wore this to China, I wore it on that plane flight, which, what was it? I think it was like a 18-hour trip or something that I was traveling. My foundation was still on. I was not a grease ball by the end of those 18 hours or whatever. I also want to say this one ranked pretty low, like in the middle of one of the 15 Days of Foundation series. This is one of those products that, as I kept using it and trying it different ways and stuff, it did grow on me and I did find ways that I really liked it. Mixed in with stuff, it could be really great. So if you've tried the Estee Lauder Double Wear and you weren't a fan of it for one reason or another and you want more coverage, try this one. Right, so this next foundation is one that this reminds me just of like OG YouTube, because I used to wear this a lot. This was like one of my go-to foundations. I don't know if it was before I started my channel or maybe right at the beginning, but this is the Rimmel Stay Matte. So this foundation breaks me out, which is why I stopped using it. The whole Rimmel Stay Matte line breaks me out, but it is awesome for controlling oil if it doesn't break you out. So the powder actually works. If you have oily skin and you haven't tried that powder, try it. Just be aware of your skin and if it's obviously causing you to break out. But this is a drugstore foundation. It's around $5. It says it's lightweight, shine control, and it's a mousse foundation. And I do feel like it's all of those. If this is too kind of matte looking or you don't like the finish of it, you can always use a product like this and just mix in something a little bit dewier. Like you could even mix in CYO Life Proof with this. Also drugstore, you'd have this would be like a $14 combo here, less than that. So if you can't find a foundation that's within your budget and has everything that you want, just mix something else in with it to create the perfect combo. This next foundation is the Makeup Forever Matte Velvet Plus. This is kind of like another one of those OG foundations. This foundation retails for $41 and it comes in 19 shades. This foundation I would say is solid medium coverage. It does have that smooth kind of soft focus matte finish, which is why I really like it. If I'm going for a matte finish, whether I have dry skin now or oily skin, I like products that don't feel too heavy, that don't look too cakey. There are a lot of matte foundations that can do that on my skin, so these ones I'm mentioning, if they have a matte finish, they don't do that for me. This foundation, the only thing I don't like is that it does oxidize a lot. So I have the shade number 15, which looks great when I first put it on, but then it does darken. Just keep that in mind that it might oxidize on you. I also like the Makeup Forever Ultra HD foundation. I really don't like the original HD foundation. That one looks horrible on my skin. The Ultra HD is nice if you like more of a satin finish. This one though, I would say is definitely more oil controlling and for oily skin. You can always get samples at Sephora too, so if you don't want to commit to one of these high-end foundations I'm mentioning, just walk into your Sephora, ask for a little sample, and they should give you them. All right, so this next foundation, if you've watched my channel for a long time, you probably knew this one was going to be in here. This is the Pure Cosmetics Bare It All foundation. This was my go-to favorite foundation for a while. I'm actually almost out of this tube right here. This foundation retails for $39 and it comes in 10 shades. I use the lightest shade, which is Porcelain, and that's a pretty good shade match for me, so I didn't have to mix this one when I would wear it. You can build up the coverage with this to get really great coverage, but I feel like the finish and coverage of this are totally dependent on the way that you're applying it. So I like to use a brush with this one. That gave me the best coverage, and I would build it up on certain areas to get more coverage. It also really depended on the skin day I was having. I found some days this made my skin look friggin' amazing, but if I was having a skin day where for whatever reason this wasn't sitting the best on my skin, so I don't know what variables there were there, but overall this was one of my go-to foundations when I had oily skin. It didn't give me the grease ball look throughout the day, and it had good coverage, good shade, so I did reach for this one a shit ton when I had oily skin. So if you are a full coverage matte kind of gal or guy, then this one is for you. This is the Jouer Essential High Coverage Cream Foundation. So this retails for $38, and they actually recently expanded the shade range of this one too. There are 50 shades in this foundation, which is so freaking amazing. Good job, Jouer. If you have acne, if you have rosacea, if you have any kind of major scarring or anything to cover up, This will do it to you. It's not a thick foundation. It is matte, but it's more of a soft matte finish. It doesn't feel super heavy on the skin. It wears amazing throughout the day. The only thing I found with this one is that I do get a little bit of creasing here and there with this one, so you do need to use something like the Smashbox primer water really helps underneath, or definitely using a setting spray on top. I mean, I use a setting spray on top of all of my foundations, whether I had oily skin or dry skin. This has very high coverage. It's definitely up there with like the Estee Lauder Double Wear Maximum. I think these two, one other one I'm going to mention has similar coverage, but these two so far are definitely the most coverage out of all these I'm mentioning. I'm actually wearing this today in the shade Alabaster mixed in with the Estee Lauder Double Wear Nude makeup in 1C1 Cool Bone. So this one's a little bit dark. This one's way too light, so when I mix these together it's a good shade, and it gives me the coverage and that matte look, but then adding this one in just makes it look a little bit more dewy and skin-like. So I can actually still use this one with my dry skin, just mixed in different ways. As far as shade match for me now, I found that Bisque is the closest shade match. They sent all 50 shades in PR, these little jars, so I've been able to try the different shades. The Dewy Foundation are these two swatches, so here's Alabaster and then here is Bisque. And if I was buying just this one to wear on its own, I'd probably go for Bisque, just to give you some shade reference if you're around my skin tone. So these next two foundations aren't ones that I would say are as oil controlling as the other foundations I've mentioned so far, but these ones work on oily skin and can really work depending on, again, what you wear underneath and over it. But this foundation is one of the only foundations that I can really recommend for any skin type. This is the Dermablend Smooth Liquid Camo Foundation. This retails for $38. It comes in 14 shades. The shade range in this sucks. I have the two lightest shades, which almost look identical. They look pretty similar, and they're both way too dark, so I do have to mix this one anytime I use it. This looks beautiful on dry skin, looks beautiful on oily skin. It does have more of a satin, dewy kind of finish, which can be pretty hard for oily skin if that is the finish that you like, because most foundations that are more dewy are obviously going to make you look more oily throughout the day, but if you mix this in with something and you want that skin-like kind of dewy look, it's going to give you that look, but it's not going to make you super oily throughout the day, at least on my skin. This one I find you can build up to full coverage. Off the bat, just off of one layer, I would say it's closer to medium coverage, again, depending on how you apply it, how much you use and everything. You can build this up to have really good coverage, and it just is the most skin-like, flattering finish out of all of these ones I'm mentioning for sure. To this day, this is one of my most reached for foundations, and it has worked for me as my skin has kind of changed and transformed. So the other one kind of along that effect is a drugstore foundation. This is the Covergirl Vitalist Healthy Elixir Foundation. This foundation retails for around $9 or $10. It comes in 14 shades. I have the lightest shade, which is 705 Ivory. And again, Covergirl, what the heck? Way too dark for being a lightest shade. It says this is Ivory. LOL. But really along the lines of the Dermablend, it just gives you the most beautiful, dewy, satin kind of look. It looks like skin. It didn't make my oil necessarily worse throughout the day. So if you want that dewy look, but you have oily skin, give this foundation a go. It wears really great through like sweating and working out and stuff too. This has pretty good coverage too. You can build this up to about a low full coverage. So if you're someone who doesn't like the matte situation, you might like this one. All right, so this next foundation is the Marc Jacobs Remarkable. I think this might be the priciest. Yeah, this is the priciest foundation out of all of these at $55. It comes in 22 shades. I have the lightest two shades, 10 and 12. There's a big shade jump between number 10 and number 12. So I usually have to mix these two shades to get my correct shade. Here's Marc Jacobs Remarkable in the lightest shade 10. I couldn't find my 12 shade, but I would say it's actually pretty similar to like this shade right here, if not a little bit darker. This foundation can be a little bit finicky, but I wanted to mention it because if you can find a way that works for your skin, holds up really well throughout the day, and it can look really beautiful, and it has amazing coverage. This is the other foundation I was talking about that's up there in coverage with these two. Really bomb coverage, definitely can cover acne and anything. I hate the packaging of this. I mean, it's like, what is happening here? The foundation gets everywhere. You need a drop of this foundation. A little bit goes a long way, so this is gonna last you forever. But this foundation, I did have to really work with to figure out what looked best for my skin because it can look too cakey. So the way that I really like to apply it is using the Smashbox primer water. I would put this on underneath and over my makeup. This thing also lasts really well. I remember taking a nap in this and I was shocked that when I woke up, my face looked exactly the same. I'm not a pretty sleeper, you know, we got some like drool action going on and stuff. And this is drool proof right here. Again, I would usually mix in something to make it look a little bit more like skin because it can look cakey really fast. So just play around with this. try mixing it with different things, try different powders and setting sprays and stuff, and I feel like if you can make this one work, it's worth it just because of the coverage and how long it lasts. Okay, so this is the last one, and then I have one kind of honorable mention that I wanted to mention. So this is the CYO Matte Foundation No Shine Zone. CYO does something right with their foundations, let me tell you. You guys know that the CYO Long Lasting Life Proof is definitely in like my top 3 foundations of all time. This one reminds me actually a lot of this when it first goes on, the HD Liquid Coverage Drops. This foundation is only $6, but it only comes in 6 shades. Again, they have the numbers kind of jumping around, like the lightest shade is 203, so I do feel like hopefully they'll eventually expand the shade range with this, because the lightest shade 203 is a joke. It's actually really similar to the lightest shade of this one, which both of these are very dark. CYO Matte Foundation in their current lightest shade 203. This one I did have to mix, but it gives you, again, that soft focus matte look, full coverage, but it doesn't look heavy, it doesn't look cakey, and it does last great throughout the day with oily skin. So if you need a more affordable option, if you can make this work with a white mixer or a different foundation or whatever to lighten it, or maybe there's a shade that matches you in those 6 shades, then this one could be worth giving a go. True full coverage foundations are hard to find at the drugstore. This is definitely one of the highest coverage foundations I've found at the drugstore. You can get CYO on Walgreens. All right, and then this last guy is the honorable mentions. This is what I'm wearing right now mixed in with the Jouer one, the Estee Lauder Double Wear Nude in the shade 1C1. This one I did want to mention because, again, it's kind of along the lines of the Covergirl, where I wouldn't say at all it's an oil controlling foundation like some of these other ones, but you can wear it for oily skin, and I don't feel like it necessarily made my oily skin worse, and that can be really tricky to find for a dewy foundation. So this is a dewy, glowy, lighter coverage foundation. I would say this is on like the medium coverage end. You can build it up, but you're not gonna get like full coverage with this guy. The lighter shade 1C1 is a bit dark for me, but this is another one that has worked for dry skin and when I had oily skin. If you like a dewy look and you like a little bit lighter coverage, but you have oily skin, this might be a good option for you. You will have to set this one for sure with the powder. It does feel very moisturizing, so when you first put it on, you wouldn't think that it would work with oily skin, but it doesn't break down throughout the day and it holds up pretty well for having a finish like this on oily skin. But overall, those are all of my top recommendations for foundations for oily skin. There were a lot of other foundations that I love and that I used, but I would just use them in different ways. Like I would mix them in with these foundations. So if you need good oil controlling foundations, try these out. Like I say in every foundation video, people's skin is totally different. Foundation that looks good on my skin might look like total shitsies on your skin. It just depends. You never know. These are just what I found worked great when I had oily skin. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I'm gonna tell you guys the makeup on the rest of my face right now. So for eyeshadow, I use the BH Cosmetics Festival palette. I've been really into this palette. Every shade I've used so far has been beautiful. My eyelashes are the Kiss Gala Lashes. For bronzer, I use my Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer in the shade Bronzer. Too Faced Papa Don't Peach is my blush shade. This is one of my favorite blushes. For highlight, I whipped back out this guy. I haven't used this in a long time. I feel like this is one of my favorite highlighters too, the Hourglass Ambient Strobe Light palette. I just use kind of a mix of all 3 shades, and I also have this light yellow one on my inner corner of my eyes. And then my lipsticks I kind of layered too. The base one is Huda Beauty Sugar Mama, and then the other one is Huda Beauty Bikini Babe. Nail polish, shirt, earrings, everything will be listed down below in the description box. I can't find the clip of me saying bye, so we're going to end on this really attractive face, but I love you guys. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.